Well, I really appreciate you being here. I really believe that there must be some karmic connection that brought you here, brought me here, brought Ron and Carmen here, and that karmic connection is what we study. We learn how to understand the law of karma better, the law of cause and effect. If we believe the founder of Buddhism, Buddha Shakyamuni, one of the core causes of suffering is ignorance. The ignorance of what? The ignorance of law of karma. Lack of understanding of simple things like cause and effect. Once we become less ignorant, we suffer less. And once we develop the ability to suffer less, then what? Well, in Zen Buddhism they say, well, chop wood and carry water. But really, what do you do when you suffer less or you experience nirvana, the state of freedom from suffering? What do you do when you become enlightened? Well, it's not like the world just starts serving you everything on a silver platter. You still have to do whatever else you need to do to make a living, to help other people. Perhaps you become more conscious and more aware of what you're doing and why. But you still have to engage in some actions. As a matter of fact, action is the translation of the word karma from Sanskrit. So we learn karma yoga. We learn how to take actions that make sense, that would lead us to the outcomes that we're looking for. And if we don't get the results that we were hoping for, well, let's reconsider doing something that would lead us to those results. In other words, if you keep doing the same thing and expect different results, that's insanity, right? So we learn how to live a more sane life. How can we live a more sane life? How can we experience greater sanity in this crazy world? Well, we realize that what makes the world crazy is exactly this ignorance of law of cause and effect. Most people basically experience some degree of misunderstanding of what causes what. And if we don't know what causes what, in other words, we are ignorant of the law of cause and effect, no wonder we experience suffering. Because we do something expecting these results and we end up having different results. And we suffer from not getting what we wanted, or maybe we may suffer from getting what we didn't want. Another thing that also happens is that we may misunderstand or have some misconceptions about other cardinal principles of life. For example, that everything changes. Everything is in a constant flow of changes. Once we realize that nothing stays the same, everything is changing, well, how can we be in the flow of changes? So instead of struggling against the flow, how can we enjoy being in the flow? Well, that's a major spiritual ordeal, or conundrum, if you will. Learning how to be in the flow at will. How do we learn that? Well, there is only one way to learn it, is by paying attention. We need to pay attention to the flow in order to learn how to align ourselves with the flow so that we can enjoy being in the flow on demand. In order to pay attention, there is another prerequisite. And the prerequisite for attention is acceptance. If we don't accept the way the flow is going, we'll be struggling against the flow because we will feel like it's going in the wrong way, or it's not going fast enough, or maybe it's going too fast, or maybe we want it to stop flowing because we just want it to be the way it is. And of course, that doesn't happen, and so we suffer. We suffer, in other words, because we need to learn something. So, we actually learn how to turn suffering from something negative, something that we want to get rid of, something we want to run away from, into a helpful tool. In Buddhism, it's referred to as upaya, the skillful means. What does it do? Well, it basically gives you an opportunity to learn a great deal from the instances in your life when you experience some dissatisfaction or suffering. If you look at those instances, not as problems, some bad things that happen to you, but actually recognize that they are profound learning opportunities, you will be able to turn them into lessons that you begin to appreciate, that you feel grateful for having in your life. Now, when you feel a great gratitude for having a lesson, you no longer perceive that lesson as a bad thing. In other words, you no longer suffer from having that experience in your life. So this is just what we can do with the past. But what I'm much more interested in is not changing the past, because we can't really change the past. We can learn from the past, but we can't change it. However, we can change a lot of things about the future. Now, of course, there are a lot of spiritual teachers that say, don't worry about the past, don't worry about the future, just be present. That's, of course, a popular cop-out, because what we consider the present moment is very fleeting. And it's constantly on the go, on the move. What we experienced a moment ago, as soon as we start thinking about what we experienced, it's already in the past. It's the recent past, maybe just a split second ago. But if we try to stick with that instance, we're no longer present. So basically we defeated our own desire or attempt to be present. Now, I don't want to say that it's impossible to be present. It is possible. But in order to experience presence, we have to let go of it. What do we do instead? Well, we realize that we live a series of events that can be strung into a timeline. Now, of course, there are some clever people who say, well, but the flow of time is not linear. Sure, we can talk about non-linear flow of time, we can talk about various dimensions, but let's not be too clever. Let's just say that there are certain things that we did, for example, in the past, that precipitated our experiences that we have now, or maybe we'll experience in the future. Did any of our hopes or dreams come to fruition that we experience right now? For example, I've always been dreaming of sharing my knowledge and my practices with other people. I never wanted to just hold them tight to my vest, so to speak, and never share them with anyone. It's been my dream, and that's basically what I've been living. And today, right now, I'm obviously manifesting this dream. I'm sharing what I have to share. So in a sense, this is a wonderful example of manifestation. For example, before we came here, Alan and Ron and Carmen and I had dinner. And we talked about how there were so many synchronicities that brought us together and also brought us to various other places in our lives, many of which we had certain premeditated ideas about. We wanted to experience something, and we actually managed to manifest those experiences. Would it be fair to say that perhaps a year ago, or 3 years, or 5 years ago, you were dreaming of being where you're at the present time? Maybe not precisely like thinking, okay, I will be in the lotus room listening to some Lama talking about manifestation. But what you experience on a daily basis nowadays, would it be fair to say that you were hoping to experience some of that back in those days, maybe a few years back? Most people experience that. Not everything that we do nowadays is exactly what we were hoping for, but there is a certain influence. If we understand this influence, we see cause and effect connections. And we realize we manifest a lot more than we give ourselves credit for. In other words, we are in the process of manifesting a lot of things in our lives. Maybe everything. But we often don't recognize that this is what's happening. And so we don't give ourselves credit for it, nor do we know really how it's happening. So it's hard to do it consciously and consistently. What if we learn about mechanisms of manifestation so that we would be able to put them to good use? Would you be able to dream up your life that would have a greater sense of meaning on the inside and a greater sense of purpose on the outside? I hope so. And that's exactly what we learn. I wrote this little ebook called Manifesting the Life of Your Dreams. And it really talks about how manifestation has certain principles. It's not rocket science, even though rocket science also is a process of manifestation. It's manifesting and dreaming up a rocket that would fly into space somewhere. So, in a sense, a lot of arts and sciences and businesses are also examples of manifesting things. As a matter of fact, pretty much any artistic endeavor or any business or any relationship can be understood from point of view of manifestation. We manifest things when we put together certain ideas or certain strategies, or when we engage in certain relationship dynamics. Do they always pan out the way that we want them to pan out? Of course not. But if we know that there are certain cause and effect connections, we probably can make it work better. It may not be perfect, but it's going to work better if we begin to connect the dots and use that knowledge on a consistent basis. What kind of dots am I talking about? Well, let me suggest this. First of all, it would be interesting to engage in gauging. Gauging meaning assessing. For example, how satisfied am I with my quality of life, with any particular aspects of life? Let's say, how satisfied am I with my health? Well, what would be the way to find out? We may have to go to a doctor and ask somebody how we feel. But do we really know to ask somebody who would tell us how we feel? Maybe we can actually feel ourselves for a change. So that gives us a license to pay attention to ourselves, to understand ourselves better, and by connecting the dots, perhaps recognizing how much we are responsible for our own health. And it all starts with simply paying attention to ourselves and assessing, how satisfied am I? Just a minute or two ago, I mentioned that there's a prerequisite for being able to pay attention. Does anyone remember what I mentioned that prerequisite was?
Letting go. Letting go of being present.
Is something else? No recall? Okay, so let's pay attention. Because what we want to pay attention to, ideally, would be something that we're already interested in. We already feel resonance with. How do you know that you are in resonance with something? You accept it. You're not struggling against it. You're not rejecting it. You're not engaging in a fight or flight, trying to run away from it or pretend it's not happening or fighting against it. In other words, that acceptance is a prerequisite of attention. And when we're talking about paying attention to ourselves, who should we accept? Ourselves. Yes, we should accept ourselves. In other words, most of us have tendency to be our own worst critics, don't we? Well, what we learn is how to basically become capable of accepting ourselves. It doesn't mean that there is no room for improvement. Of course, there is plenty of room for improvement in each and every one of us. But accepting ourselves the way we are allows us to stop struggling against ourselves. By paying attention to that which we accept, then we can learn more about the subject matter. Or in this case, it's the subject and an object of attention at the same time. If we're paying attention to ourselves, we get to know ourselves better. And knowing yourself is the holy grail of most schools of spiritual thought and disciplines that are worth their salt. Agree? Knowing yourself is only possible when you pay attention to yourself. There's no other way to get self-knowledge. And in order to pay attention to yourself, we need to accept ourselves. So basically recognize that there are certain simple steps that we need to take in order to gain self-knowledge. And with this self-knowledge, we can also start experiencing less suffering because we're less ignorant. And then we can actually start manifesting things more consciously because we recognize how much everything we begin to know can be used as a resource. So before we talk about resources, let me suggest another thing. One of the things that we experience in the process of life are different degrees of satisfaction with the quality of life. Sometimes we're more satisfied, sometimes we're less satisfied. Does it mean that we should not accept ourselves when we're less satisfied with ourselves? No, we should not stop accepting ourselves when we're not satisfied. It's just an invitation to pay attention to what is the cause of that dissatisfactory or unsatisfactory performance or unsatisfactory expression of ourselves. In other words, if I understand what makes me perform better, for instance, then perhaps I can put more of my efforts to bring that forward, put that energy into the driver's seat, so to speak, making it my driving force. If I understand that there are certain things that impede my performance, well, maybe I engage less in that so that I don't stifle my performance or not affect negatively my quality of life. In other words, I get a handle on my own quality of life. It only happens if I pay attention. Now, manifestation means that we want something. And by and large, it's something other than what is. So there is some degree of an acceptance when we talk about wanting to manifest something else. So there is going to be friction between wanting something else and accepting ourselves and our lives just the way they are. Makes sense, right? Yes. So how do we do that? How do we overcome this seeming contradiction between the idea of being accepting and present and on one hand, and on the other hand, wanting to manifest our dreams? Well, one simple idea that allows us to reconcile these seemingly polarized approaches is what I call awakening. Just like in a dream. You may be dreaming, for example, you may have a dream at night, but you may awaken in the middle of the dream without waking up from the dream. Have you ever experienced a dream when you became lucid and you realized that you're dreaming without necessarily waking up from the dream? Mm-hmm. Yeah? Well, imagine that lucidity can become an ongoing practice. So you can actually train your consciousness to become more and more lucid, more and more awake. And it may happen not only in our night dreams, it may also happen in our daydreams. As a matter of fact, it's a lot easier to awaken in your daydreams because you're not asleep. The mechanism of dreaming is the same, whether it's a daydream or a night dream. And if we wake up in the middle of our daydreams, then we realize, okay, I'm awake, I'm fully present to the true nature of what I'm experiencing right now. But it's a daydream, it's a figment of my imagination, my consciousness is spinning some kind of a story. Okay, so this is the moment of truth. It's basically the moment of coalescing of two seemingly polarized principles of being present on one hand and dreaming on the other hand. Does it make sense?
Repeat that. Please.
It's the moment of truth during which the two seemingly polarized principles coalesce. The idea of being present on one hand and the idea that you're dreaming on the other hand.
Mm-hmm.
When you're dreaming, by definition, you are not present because you are either remembering something that happened in the past, for example, reminiscing about something, or maybe feeling sad about some event that happened, or maybe feeling angry if something worked out not the way that you wish they would. On the other hand, also thinking about the future is another obvious form of daydreaming, when we are thinking about something we wish to experience, although many people have tendency to daydream about things they don't want to experience.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, that's the essence of such experiences as anxiety or worries or concerns. Have you ever done that?
Sure. Yeah.
How do we worry about things? Well, if you think about it, the true essence of the experience is that we're daydreaming about something that we don't want to experience, and then we worry that it's going to happen. Or we are afraid of something that is going to happen, and we start getting anxious about it. So it's a daydream, but we somehow manage to turn it into a nightmare of sorts. But that's not a problem. Having a nightmare of a daydream may actually encourage you, motivate you to become more awake to the true essence of what's happening, that you're daydreaming. If you recognize that you are dreaming in the middle of your worries or anxious thoughts about the future, would you continue causing yourself that kind of nightmare? Probably not, unless you're really a glutton for punishment, right? You will probably start getting more curious, like, well, that was not a pleasant dream. Now, what would I like to dream up instead? So you literally give yourself license to get creative. And that's exactly what dreaming allows us to experience. The sky's the limit when it comes to dreaming. So we allow ourselves to get creative and dream big. That's what often people talk about in terms of manifesting. They say, well, don't just dream small and manifest some kind of small things like a dinner, for example. Dream big. What can you dream up? Something that would be substantial, something that would have high value. Well, we can dream about the world peace, but it's kind of an abstract thing. And probably we can also dream up something a little bit more realistic, because the world peace is a really challenging concept for many to grasp. So we can start with something a little bit more realistic, but still big enough. So we can gauge not only ourselves, but also our dreams. How realistic am I dreaming? Now, I don't want to say that we should dream small to make it more realistic, guaranteed to happen. We can manifest all kinds of things if we know how and we have access to the proper resources. The proper resources. That's what most of the teachers who talk about manifestation miss out on. Has anyone seen the movie The Secret? Yeah? So they talk a lot about manifesting and how our thoughts create our reality, and how we need to have a vision board, and how we can dream of achieving something or having a nicer car or nicer this and house and partner and who knows what else. But it's really an exercise that is missing a lot of important components. Some of these components are obvious. For example, I was just mentioning the resources. In order to manifest something of value, often we don't have proper resources, and so we fail. How would we manifest something that would be of high value? We need to tap into the resources that would enable us to actually manifest that. Now, these resources may be connections, or maybe brighter ideas, or maybe money, or maybe more time, or maybe some kind of cohesion with a social movement, or other people interested in the same things. So all types of resources exist outside of us. Most importantly, there are plenty of resources existing within ourselves. Tapping into those would enable us to be the way we need to be in order to manifest what we aspire to manifest. Often people think, I'm going to be the way I have been, but I will dream up something grandiose. Well, of course, they get dissatisfied or sad because they don't manage to manifest it for a simple reason. They did not change themselves. They did not become that person who would deserve to experience that, who would karmically connect with that experience. And so, of course, it becomes difficult or impossible to manifest that without changing from within. So we have to access both the resources within as well as the resources without. Now, when we talk about resources, it means we actually learn how to become more resourceful. And more resourcefulness also leads to what we call greater resilience. So we may not even recognize how we train ourselves in resilience almost every day, because on many occasions we have some challenges during the day or on some almost repetitive cyclical basis. These challenges basically give us opportunities to develop greater resilience. Unfortunately, if we don't perceive them as such, as lessons in resilience, then we call them problems and we engage in a fight or flight, basically causing ourselves stress and not learning the lessons that contain within those learning opportunities. But if we learn how to become more resilient after each and every one of those lessons, it is not going to take us long to develop a high level of resilience and high level of resourcefulness. What would that mean? It would mean that we would actually be much more functional as human beings. That's one of the things that is missing in many of the teachings associated with the idea of the law of attraction. Popular law that is obviously an important law to know, but what's missing is the ability to become more functional, not just wishing something and hoping that it's going to manifest in front of you, but actually becoming more functional so that you would be able to make it happen. Because nobody's going to do it for you. You have to do it yourself. And as one of my friends says, Brendan Burchard, he says, if you hope that the great achievement will knock on your door and you're waiting for it, and then you hear the knock, well, don't be surprised when you open the door and what you see is work. You're going to work. You're going to do a lot of things that would then provide the substance for manifestation. Without the substance, without work, manifestation doesn't happen. Or it happens on some sporadic basis, and that's what we call happening once in a blue moon. We don't want to rely on some sporadic occurrences that happen once in a blue moon. We want to actually experience this on a consistent basis. The more consistently we experience high levels of functioning, high levels of resilience, and resourcefulness, the more consistently we learn how to put these abilities and skills to good use. And that's the golden key to mastery. There is no way to master anything if you don't practice it. Well, how do you practice it? You do it on a regular basis. There's an obvious difference in my attitude in regard to mastery, as opposed to a lot of folks who talk about mastery as some sort of a high level of achievement. I don't view mastery as achievement. I view mastery as a process of becoming more and more masterful. So you are not on a journey to mastery, you are on a journey of mastery, where each and every step you take gives you an opportunity to express your mastery, to hone it, to develop it to a greater degree. And then you can take the next step, and hopefully the next step will be more masterful than the previous one. So that becomes a chain of masterful steps. Well, that would be a powerful way to live, wouldn't it? We learn how to live our lives in such a masterful way by developing the attitude that I'm practicing mastery, and I want to gauge myself as to how masterful, or how functional at least, I am as I'm performing whatever I'm doing. And what I'm doing ideally would be manifesting and living my dreams. How would I do that? Well, basically we need to discover how to tap and actualize our human potential. It wouldn't be a revelation to share this image, or perhaps metaphor, a popular metaphor of an an iceberg. Iceberg is basically a chunk of ice floating in the water, right? And what we see is just the tip of the iceberg above water, maybe 10% of it. And then, of course, there is a huge, maybe 90% of the iceberg that is hidden underwater and is unknown or unseen. Well, this metaphor represents what we know about ourselves. If we consider that everything we know about ourselves, about life, about our world in general, is just the tip of the iceberg. Imagine how much more resourceful and how much more knowledgeable and wise you would be if you managed to connect with the deeper part of the iceberg. That deeper part of the iceberg is where most of the power resides, that sustains and supports the existence of that little tip that sticks above the water, that which we know. And the deeper part of the iceberg is also where most of our resources, most of our human potential can be found. That's why we call it potential, because we haven't actualized it yet, right? Why have we not actualized it? Because it's below the surface of consciousness. We are not conscious or not aware of it, so obviously we don't know how to tap into it or whether we even have it. So we learn how to develop a more clear or clearer interface between the tip of the iceberg and the huge part of the iceberg that's underwater, where most of our dreams and aspirations also come from. How do we develop a more clear interface? Well, this clear interface is awareness. Awareness is the faculty of consciousness that allows you to get to know that which you didn't know before, which is exactly the function of this layer of the iceberg separating the tip from the bottom of it. When you look through this layer of the iceberg as if it is a clear window from the tip of the iceberg, you can see what's going on deep below. So the clear awareness basically gives you access to those things that you didn't know before about yourself or about life or about the whole world. how do we develop this awareness? Well, just like we talked about paying attention. There is no way to become aware of something if you don't pay attention to it. So, as you can see, we're making full circle now. We basically need to develop such quality of consciousness as awareness by becoming more attentive. Unfortunately, we live in a world that is full of attention deficit. People have attention deficit disorder, or they just don't receive enough attention. Maybe they don't receive attention from their partners or from their community or from their government. They can blame them for not paying attention and not providing them whatever they hope to receive. But what we really need to realize is that nobody can give us more attention than we can give to ourselves. Let me repeat it again. Nobody can give us more attention than we can give to ourselves. What does it mean? It means that we need to actually start getting busy paying attention to ourselves. Which seems like a pretty selfish thing to do, doesn't it? A lot of people tell me, well, but I grew up in a family where my parents told me you don't want to just pay attention to yourself because it's selfish or it's egotistic. But guess what? You can't pay attention to others if you don't know yourself. You can't give that which you don't have. What we learn is how to pay enough attention to ourselves so that we get to know ourselves better. And there is also another really important reason for paying attention to ourselves. Have you ever heard this expression that where attention goes, energy flows? Yeah? Well, if your attention goes to you, where does the energy flow?
Inside.
It flows towards you as well. In other words, you create a massive recycling or circulation of energy in your system. This is the secret to empowerment, self-empowerment. That basically, if we realize that nobody can give us as much attention as we can give to ourselves, we stop relying on other people empowering us. We no longer depend on them to give us the attention and thereby give us the energy that we would thrive on. We learn to thrive by giving attention to ourselves, creating massive flow of energy within our own system, and then tap into that flow so that we can enjoy being in the flow. And we can route it to direct it towards certain creative projects or ideas or supporting certain causes or manifesting our dreams. That's one of the massive resources that are, by and large, untapped in most people's lives. And if we learn how to tap into this resource, we become tremendously more empowered. Does it make sense? Does it make sense, guys?
Yes, it does.
Yes? All right. Because I'm curious. If it makes sense to you, what is your greatest takeaway from what we've explored so far today? Anyone? Are we all falling asleep? Nobody's taking anything away.
I think it's intention and self-assessment. What resonates with me is kind of like a circuit, and
Yeah.
it needs to be constant. It needs to be intentional to keep the wheel turning, but then assess, look, compare to what my results are, and then you can you get better. Obviously practice makes perfect. So
Yeah.
that's what to me. Obviously, I have to want to change my life. I have to envision that change. I have to look at what I have, resources, and then what can I change? Conscious of the laws of karma. If I choose a certain way, I'll get one result. I know sometimes we think there's a bad and a good karma, but it's really just karma.
Right.
And so I think it's that constant, in the business world, it's CIT. You form a continuous improvement team.
Mm-hmm.
But in our life, do we want to stay in where we are, anxious, ignorant, kind of just floating along or whatever, or do we want to? Do we envision something better, or at least something different?
Yes, obviously that is a great takeaway. So thank you for sharing this. And one of the things that we recognize is when we accept ourselves, it doesn't mean that we reach the pinnacle of development. There is room for improvement. In Tibet, there is a long-standing tradition called Dzogchen that is present both in Tibetan shamanism as well as in Tibetan Buddhism. And Dzogchen looks at everything and recognizes its perfection. That's the term, Dzogchen, meaning great perfection. But everything is perfect with lots of room for improvement. So we realize that accepting things the way they are doesn't mean that we want them to stay the way they are. We recognize that they are the way they are for a reason, we accept it, and then we put some energy towards either finding a greater way to perform, greater way to improve the quality of life, or help others. In other words, we start experiencing manifestation of our dreams. But we need to be clear on what we want to manifest. Of course, unclear, murky dreams also get manifested, but who wants that, right? The murky experiences. We all know what it's like to have some not so pleasant dreams manifest. It's when we focus on things that we don't want. And as you heard me mentioning it, where attention goes, energy flows. We actually empower the manifestation of exactly that which we don't want. And then we, of course, can bitch and moan that we don't like getting that which we don't want. Basically, we are not happy with what we got or wish we would get something different. But in order to get something different, we need to act differently, and we need to think differently, and we need to be a different person. Now, there is no way for me to guide you through the process of becoming a different person in the context of a short gathering tonight. But I hope that it's going to be a first step in developing a greater mastery on this path. For you, I would be happy to take you by the hand and walk you along this path of becoming more and more masterful, and also helping you develop authenticity so you don't have to follow me in each and every one of my footsteps, because not all my footsteps are perfect. They may work for me, but it doesn't mean that it would work for everyone. So why don't we actually develop a way of taking our own authentic steps that would serve our purposes, that would align with our values. And when we take steps that are in alignment with our high priority values, we feel like we live in purpose. Who wouldn't want that, right? So, is this something that you feel gives you some encouragement, motivation, or perhaps piques your curiosity so that you would feel like you would like to dive deeper into it?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wonderful. I have this little book that I just recently wrote and wanted to share. Today's Black Friday. Things are selling for cheap, so I'm also giving a massive discount on this book. It's very inexpensive to begin with, but it's available for $2 today.
Wow. Wow.
And what we do is we offer it as an ebook. Not as a printed book, but as an ebook. I really like trees. I don't like cutting them down and wasting paper. But what I do like is sharing knowledge and wisdom and the path of mastery. And so this is something that I would encourage you to visit my website for. And I will be happy to send you a link with embedded coupon code that would give you the massive discount that I offer today, at 67% discount, and it would literally give you a really simple and elegant framework for manifesting virtually anything. Now, the reason why I'm talking about just providing you the framework is because there is a lot more to it than can fit in just one little ebook or in one short presentation. I actually have a Facebook group. Believe it or not, I'm one of those lamas that actually have a Facebook presence, and I'm even broadcasting right now as we speak in that group. The group is called Flow and Thrive. We learn how to be in the flow and how to thrive as a result of that. We learn how to manifest the lives that we deserve. How do we do that? Well, we have a group coaching program, and I would love to invite you to check it out. Talk to me about it. You don't have to make a commitment to joining this group coaching program without talking to me. This is one of the dreams of many authors who would love to connect with their readers and share more of what they have to offer besides what they put in paper. And also it's a dream of many readers who would love to connect with the authors of their favorite books. So they would be able to pick their brains better. They would be able to ask them questions that were not answered in the books, or just connect and learn more. Well, basically what we're doing is we're manifesting the dreams of both the authors and the readers. I'm actually creating this opportunity to connect with me directly. I would love to walk you through this path, along this path, and take this journey alongside with you. I've traveled this path for most of my life. I've been a Tibetan Lama since 1992, so it's 30 years. And I've been teaching and practicing all over the world. This is something that I do for a living full-time. And also I create books and meditation CDs and coaching programs and online courses and webinars and podcasts and all kinds of other fun things that can be done these days with the help of this marvel of technology called the internet. I work with people from all over the world using the modern communications technologies such as the internet and FaceTime or Skype or what have you. And what we do is we basically engage in the ongoing exploration, how to become more resourceful, how to develop greater wisdom and authenticity, how to create dreams or certain aspirations that would really make sense, that would be both big and realistic, develop strategies for manifesting those dreams step by step. That's something that I would love to offer to you. A free strategy session. Something that I will just give to you as a gift, whether or not you even buy this book. Of course, with the help of this book, you will have more sources to tap into, but with or without it, I can actually take you through the process of developing an intelligent strategy for the next year, coming year, 2023, to make that year the year of manifesting your dreams. So you will have to come up with some interesting dreams that you would like to manifest that would be worth putting your energy and efforts into. And then together we'll create the strategy for making it happen. How does it sound?
Sounds great.
Nice.
Sounds like a dream come true for many people, doesn't it? So that's exactly what I'm here. When people ask me, so what do you do as a Tibetan Lama? And I always answer, well, I help people manifest and live their dreams. What do you do? That sounds like a dream job, doesn't it? Well, it's because it is. I dreamed it up, and I constantly recreate this dream and keep manifesting it to greater and greater depth. And I would love to help you manifest your dreams. If you have any questions or comments about anything we've explored today, I would be happy to answer any questions. If you want to talk to me about this ebook, I will be happy to take your email and send you the link to it. And also we can book a strategy session either right now, or we can connect by email and do it in the near future. Any questions, any comments? Come on, folks. This is a great opportunity to ask any questions. If you had questions but didn't have a Lama to answer those, now is the time. Yeah. Questions?
Basically, are you addressing everyone has their inherent nature, intuition, higher self, and is that where you're coming to help the person to reach their own inner knowing or inner reliance on that everything is happening because of a disconnect from intuition, from higher self, or pure Buddha nature, whatever you want to call it?
Thank you for a good question. You're absolutely right. I definitely help with that. This would be a great resource to connect with, right? If we don't connect with our higher self, if we don't connect with intuition or with our Buddha nature, well, we would be missing out on a major resource. So yes, definitely, we want to connect with that aspect of our being, which is the foundational piece of who we are. It's not the only resource that we can put to good use, but it certainly is very important. So yes, the answer is affirmative. I help with that. Yeah.
Yeah, being of past generation, way back, the internet and all the emails and connection with the computers and all, and these phones that are supposed to be smart, and the smart TVs and everything, I have a very difficult time, and I'm lucky to have about 9 or 10, maybe even more, grandchildren that I ask which button do I press and how do I get this information, you know. Mm-hmm. And so I'm a open book type reader, and I don't do that very good. But so I go with a lot of intuitive feelings, you know, and try to open my heart to where I need to be and what I need to manifest and learn, and loving awareness and consciousness, and so I find when I meet a person like yourself that has a world of knowledge and information to feed into, I do like to connect, but again, it's, you know, I have a very difficult time with this modern smart stuff, you know. So I just I am gonna definitely get your memoir there and stuff of that nature. And, I know Alan real well. He has a whole bookstore, so I come there all the time. And,
do you use a regular phone?
I do have an iPhone, or what do they call it, but I don't use it.
Well, do you like talk to people on the phone?
My wife does. You know, my wife carries the phone. I don't carry the phone with me at all. And but we do have an email address, and I do know it by memory. It's real simple because it's my name.
Right.
And so, but that's about the difficulty that I have with all the modern technology. And
Yeah.
and then I go to seminars and I go to different people that I connect with as masters or more knowledgeable than I can even begin to grasp, and it helps, you know, to uplift me and to live a better life. But
Yeah.
so anyhow, that's my own personal problem. It's just the modern day connection.
We can call it the personal problem, or we can call it the personal learning opportunity.
Yeah, right.
And to which I would say, welcome to 21st century.
I know it. Yeah.
We're living in times when it's pretty imperative to put to good use some of this technology. I would love to not rely on it. And for the longest time, I didn't rely on it. But then I came to a realization that it's not going anyway.
No.
And so we might as well get on with the program. And so I learned how to use all these technologies. It wasn't easy, but I guess it wasn't as hard as I thought it might be. It also helps to have people around who know how to use it, whether they are grandchildren or anybody else who basically can help figure out which buttons to push and how to send a read email. It can improve the quality of life if we stop struggling with the technology and actually enjoy benefits that it has to offer. But yeah, of course, it also is not the easiest thing. So basically what we do is we learn how to identify our edges of the comfort zone. It seems like your comfort zone is at the point where you can use iPhone as long as your wife dials it or pushes the button to answer it. Okay, well, that's a pretty nice edge of the comfort zone to begin with. But do you want to stay within the same confines of that comfort zone? Because most of our dreams and aspirations tend to reside outside of our comfort zones. If we stay within our old comfort zones, often we don't even experience manifestation of our dreams. We feel like our comfort zone shrinks. You know, it's one of those things. If you don't use it, you lose it. We basically become more and more confined within narrower and narrower comfort zones, which is not a great way to be. The quality of life is guaranteed to become less and less. So what we do is we learn how to explore what it's like to be on the edge of the comfort zone. This is something that I don't even think I included in this ebook. It's kind of the next step in the process of learning how to manifest things. Because the more time you spend exploring the edges of your comfort zone, the more you get used to being there. And by doing so, you actually make your comfort zone broader. It expands and envelopes those things that used to be beyond. If those things that used to be outside of your comfort zone now get included in it, guess what? It becomes relatively doable and even comfortable to experience them. So those dreams and aspirations that used to reside outside of our comfort zone, and that's the reason why we aspired to, we keep dreaming about them, but we often don't manifest them, is because it's too uncomfortable to push ourselves over the edge. Now, many people say, oh, just leap before you look, or, take a great leap and get to outside of your comfort zone. Well, almost everyone has done it. They leapt, they hurt themselves, they basically experienced enough discomfort and pain that they had to retreat back into the comfort of their comfort zone to lick their wounds, to recuperate, recharge, regroup, and then maybe try it again. And again, get hurt or get too uncomfortable to come back into the comfort zone again to recharge and regroup, and then do it again. basically, a lot of people create cyclical crisis in their lives this way. And instead of that, what I'm talking about is exploring what it's like to be on the edge. Living your life on the edge is not just a interesting phrase, it's actually a principle. I live my life on the edge, but I don't push myself over the edge to cause myself grief. But I don't retreat into the comfort zone where everything is just really comfortable and kind of underwhelming. So finding that edge of the comfort zone where your skills and abilities are neither overwhelmed by the challenges that are outside of the comfort zone, nor are they underwhelmed when you reside deep within your comfort zone. They match each other. Your skills and abilities match the challenges. Now that's the prerequisite for being in the flow.
Mm-hmm.
And when we are in the flow, we experience the most profound sense of wellness and well-being, and we can achieve a great deal more because we're not struggling against the flow. We're in the flow, we're surfing these waves instead of pedaling against them or being battered by them. As you're surfing, of course, you don't just relax and go wherever the wind blows. You have a very important job to do, maintaining dynamic balance on your surfboard, so to speak. I lived in all kinds of tropical islands, in Guam and Hawaii and other places, so I learned how to surf. Probably one of the few lamas that actually surf. And this is an amazing metaphor also for our daily lives. What if we learn how to live our lives like we surf the waves in the ocean of life? That would be freaking amazing, wouldn't it? So that's exactly what we do. We learn how to develop that kind of attitude that allows us to experience flow on demand. And by doing the exploration of edges of our comfort zone, we expand our comfort zone. And that which used to be outside of the comfort zone now actually becomes within our reach. And that is how we make our dreams come true. Those things that used to be unavailable or unreachable now actually become attainable. I just shared with you a very simple and profound transformation of consciousness that allows us to actually live our dreams. It's just one of many. There's a lot more that we can do in terms of developing a really intelligent and effective lifestyle and way of thinking and way of being that allows us to live our lives like we're living a dream life. As a matter of fact, that's why I called my book Manifesting the Life of Your Dreams. Any other questions, folks? Yeah, Ron.
Does the book include any grid or portion as far as you're assessing things, what has changed in the background? Like, changed circumstances, like a new easier to use phone come out, or like where I work. I mean, I'm approaching retirement age, and yet 2 years ago, my job changed astronomically. And believe me, I'm not one to love stepping out of my comfort zone. And where I work, it's a cancer center, and every genetic test that comes in, I see. And I started there 5 years ago, and the number and type of genetic tests that come in has probably gone up 10 times. And I hated that. Mm-hmm. But because the nature of the job changed so much, I kind of had a choice. Either embrace it or retire. And so as I was listening to you talk, that came up to me is that, we can envision where we want to be and manifest ourselves, but then something around us changes. Mm-hmm. A new baby's born in the family, the car breaks down, whatever it could be, and your mobility has changed, or whatever. And I don't know because you alluded both that there are some things in the book, but is maybe your counseling session maybe would include some aspect of being hyper-aware about assessing changes and making that part of expanding your comfort zone. Sorry, it was a kind of an unclear question. But
That's a great question. Thank you for asking it. So it's not a grid because it's a really fluid, dynamic process. However, what it does have is a really cool dynamic meditation.
oh,
The dynamic meditation that allows you to bring into one energetic nature the two seemingly polarized energetic experiences. The energetic experience of the current state of affairs that you experience at the present time, and how you envision your life to be, which obviously would require being different person, having different energies, different consciousness. Well, how do we reconcile these two? Well, there's a wonderful meditation practice that allows you to achieve exactly that. And in addition to that, we also have the chapter of the book dedicated to developing a greater human potential. We learn how to tap into more resources, how to develop greater mindfulness, how to take smaller steps, how to develop a greater ability to correct your course when changes happen and you need to adapt to them. Basically, this adaptability is the key to resilience. And then we do testing. We constantly test. Well, how is this working for me? What I do, if I do something here, what kind of results do I get? Now let's make a mental note about this. Let's try something else. How about this? If I take this course of action, how does that work for me? Well, if I take this course of action and I get those results, then how do I resonate with those results as compared to these results that I get if I follow this course of action? Not everything is equal. There are certain greater and lower degrees of resonance, but it's not black and white. That's really key principle also. That it's not just good or bad, or positive and negative. It's on a spectrum. And we learn to recognize that most of the things we experience are not just on one end of the spectrum, say, for example, good or positive or high resonance, 100% resonance, or opposite end of the spectrum, like no resonance or bad or negative. No, most things that we experience are somewhere in the middle, like the bell curve. And so we have to develop discernment that would allow us to check that for resonance with a particular course of action or particular behavior or way of thinking. And then when we commit to a particular course of action or way of thinking that resonate the most, we experience the least amount of friction, least amount of internal resistance. Those frictions and internal resistances are what often takes a lot of energy. Nobody wants to create internal warfare, right? We want inner peace. Well, how do we achieve inner peace? Well, this is the way to achieve inner peace. We basically exercise discernment based on energy awareness as to how much we resonate with different courses of action or different attitudes or different ways of thinking. And as we choose those that we resonate the most with, we feel like we're in the flow when we follow that course of action because it's easy. We don't experience too much friction. We don't experience internal resistance. In other words, no sabotage is happening. If we don't experience internal sabotage, we have just gotten rid of about 50% of human suffering. So it literally is that simple. And I'm glad that you asked this question because it's a really important one. Any other questions, folks?
When you are in the flow, how do you figure out that you are not in the too comfortable? Because you said it's useful to be on the edge, not overwhelming, but not too lazy.
Yeah.
But when you get in the flow and everything is beautiful, what do you need to do? I don't know.
Thank you. So it's beautiful, but it's challenging. If you are not challenged enough, it means you will be underwhelmed because probably your abilities or skills are greater than the challenges that you encounter. So it's not exciting. It's not particularly demanding. You are basically not performing at the high level of your performance. It's not peak performance experience. When you're in the flow, you experience peak performance. In other words, your level of skills and level of challenges meet each other. They match. You are neither underperforming because your skills are below the demands of the challenge, nor are you bored or underperforming because you're deep inside a comfort zone and you're not challenged enough. So that is what we're looking for. We're looking for challenges. We're looking for opportunities to apply ourselves more fully. That gives you the ability to live your life more fully.